My last stop was Marlow for 2.5 weeks, staying at a lovely house in Marlow Bottom. This was the garden out of the back, a steeped terrace, and Tabby the cat that took a while to take a shine to me, but eventually she came in for food at least. The first night I went down to Marlow and the River Thames. It's just up the road from Henley-on-Thames, which is famous for the Henley Regatta, which was the last stop on this journey, but it was lovely to have a walk alongside the Thames. I didn't go into London, I just didn't feel the call to. Lots of National Trust properties to see. I started at Cliveden, whilst it's a hotel now and has been since 1985. The National Trust still hold the grounds. It's been a party place for a number of years, including the site of the Profumo affair back in the 60s. But very grand, only need £600 for a bed for the night. But the grounds were stunning, you could walk around. That's called the parterre, the landscape gardens beyond the terraces. And that's the side of the hotel. Some of the guests actually chatted to me whilst I was walking round. They sound to have a lovely time. So it was a beautiful view. The grounds were lovely. They had burial places. The gardens were stunning. Obviously, they cook with their produce, seasonal produce. The courgette plants were amazing. I'd never seen anything quite like it. Very meticulous, very neat. They were one of the highlights of the grounds. The topiary with the mice carved into the hedgerows with the cheeky statues. I can imagine the parties that went on. The next day I went to Hughenden, the home of Disraeli, Queen Victoria's famous favourite Prime Minister back in the days. And these were the signs as I walked in, the power of storytelling. I thought, how appropriate. I really enjoyed getting to know his character, of which I knew little before I got there, but it has a double history, which I'll speak more of in a minute. This is Hughenden Manor, where Disraeli lived. And I'm videoing it because I love the sound of the church bells in the background. It's a really beautiful building. All about myth and myth-making at the moment as well, right up my alley. So this is the side entry. Not side entry, the side view of the house. It comes down a slope across to that vista. You hear the bells again. My last Sunday of National Trust exploring in England. I've loved it so much. It was a gorgeous sunny day as well. It was going to get up to 31 degrees today and tomorrow, so it was making the most of the weather, sitting in a deck chair waiting for the property to open. So it's good to have a walk around the grounds first, take up some rays before having a look at the history. Just beautiful details in the gardens, etc. It has a double history, and I first explored the map room. It had been a secret service use it was only discovered about 20 years ago. Most fascinating. This was more the historical side, where Disraeli lived whilst he wrote many things, and Prime Minister, etc., with his precious wife. I liked some of the exhibitions, the symbology. Life, like all great travellers, I've seen more than I remember. And I grew intoxicated with my own eloquence. I love that. A statue of him with the history of the creator behind, and the detail on it was really rather special. Really enjoyed that place. I'm here at this beautiful Buddhist shrine in the middle of the forest. The sound of the M40 humming humbly back in the background. 45-minute walk up here and the same back. It's just beautiful sometimes to take a moment of serenity and sit in the presence of a bigger power, no matter what you believe. There were more statues of the stupas as I walked down the path. There was no signpost to this place. You kind of just had to know about it. but the woodlands were rather gorgeous. Did get a bit lost, but found my way back. And then on the Monday afternoon, being a beautiful day, I went up to Rebellion Beer Brewery, about a 15-minute walk, and did a flight of beers, rather delicious homemade beers. Then I went to Gray's Court, which has been in it's a Tudor country house that's been in the family's ownership for 900 years, including 13 women, of all things, including Evelyn Fleming, the mother of Ian Fleming, of James Bond fame. And the gardens were beautiful, and it has an old donkey wheel mill. We couldn't see it, but apparently that's rather quite famous there as well. As always, the gardens are beautiful. And it was very much as Mrs. Brunner had left it when she died in 2003. She'd been there since 1937. So it doesn't look that dated because it's not that long since it's lived in. The following day, I went to Hellfire Caves, which had been excavated in the 1750s under Sir Francis Dashwood. And there was rather, a secret society club of, the wealthy and the political. And they got up to all kinds of shenanigans down here in the caves. Bats. I love bats. We used to have pipistrelle bats when we lived at home, 800 of them. So, yes, here are the caves under the ground, the labyrinth that had been dug out to provide the stonework for the local roads, etc. Haunted caves, apparently. They've done many films down here, and this makes a great place for Halloween parties, etc., and you can rent it out. And then they had an inner temple right in the heart of the place, and you can imagine what sort of events would be going on down here. The stalagmites and stalactites of the caves behind the gated area. And this was the inner temple. It was all quite eerie, fascinating to see. So here at the Hellfire Caves, we're in the banqueting hall. And they have these little caves off the side where the monks would go, the 12 brothers, spend time with their ladies, apparently. We've got these little statues in there. And then this is the banqueting hall itself, which you can hire out for events. Can you imagine? So off we go down there. It's creepy, eh? The caves themselves were under a big hill upon which the mausoleum and church stood at the top. And off in the distance was West Wickham Park, the home of Sir Francis Dashwood, where I would be heading next. But it was a rather good view from the top of the hill. And that was inside the mausoleum. It wasn't a lot to be written about it, but had a weird sense about this place, of what it would be used. And that was the church, St. Lawrence, I believe, next door, no longer used, but it was, there as part of it. Quite a sight. So as I came up to West Wickham Park, which is a family home, that's been in the Dashwood family for 300 years. You might recognise it from Bridgerton or Aunt Rosamond's house in Downton Abbey. It was rather spectacular, and with these homes that are family homes, of course, there's no pictures on the inside, which I think is fair enough, and it's nice just to really take it in through a guided tour of the place. So I had a chance to look around the grounds for an hour or so before I could get my slot to walk around, another famous one. It's only open for a few hours in the afternoon. Big lakes, ducks. The weather has turned by this point. It was raining in the afternoon. And then, of course, magical Highclere Castle. You may know it as Downton Abbey. I am a mad fan and have been rewatching. So I went to town on pictures from the outside because, again, you couldn't take any on the inside. But it was fascinating to wander around and see all the rooms that I knew so well from screen, and to imagine Lady Mary and the Countess Dowager having their tea, etc., and the parties. It was beautiful, carved outside, but the thing that excited me the most was the Egyptian exhibition, and I sneaked in one photo of Sekhmet downstairs. It was amazing. And I had clotted cream and scones for lunch, along with 4 wasps that were also after it as well. So a few more photos from the outside. I can just imagine Lord Carnarvon, entertaining Howard Carter here before they discovered the tombs of in the Valley of the Kings, Tutankhamun, and it was a lot of history about that there. The gardens were beautiful, extensive, down with views back to the house. Again, you spot what's familiar. There's a current programme on TV I've seen with the Lord and Lady Carnarvon as they run it now, and it's quite a lucrative business. Well, keeping the estate alive, and they needed £12 million to renovate the castle, which I think they've done through the filming and creating a business, and it's great to see how things develop over the years to keep the family business going. This was called the Monk's Garden, with rather beautiful archways of the hedgerows. The view back over the famous yew trees, if you know the series. And then, of course, I had to have the obligatory photo on the bench under the yew tree that so many scenes were set in from Downton. And I think that's probably my favourite shot of it, as I say. I went to town a bit, but I absolutely loved it. It was my last big jaunt. My very last trip out before I sold the car on the Saturday was down to Hambledon Mill, where I walked across the River Thames and went through the fields on a 2-hour trek down to Henley on Thames. The ducks were asleep on the waterways and the view back, and I saw a lock being operated, waiting for the barges to go through. That was quite interesting. So you have to wait for the gates, this is the barge going through, you have to wait for the locks to be opened and closed before you can cross the river. The cows are moving into their new field. Saturday morning, I'm doing a 2-hour hike from Hambledon down to Henley-on-Thames, of Henley Regatta fame. I'll get to the river, back to the river at some point. See them all practicing in their rowboats, no doubt. But for now, I'm taking in my last glimpses of the British countryside. And this is Henley-on-Thames itself, which would be the finish line for the famous regatta that's been there for many years. These are some of the fancy clubs and houses along the river banks. There was a festival ongoing at the same time, so it was rather busy. And that's looking up to the temple where the regatta starts. And it's where my trip ends. Enjoy.